Dear Arsenal, hold that. Kind regard. This is your average PGMOL apology. After a shambles of a decision, the best you're gonna get is a whoops, sorry, without any consideration or regard for a loss of points or how that's gonna impact your season. Or impact your nose in the form of David Coote. And the rest of the refs have crossed the line this season as well. And that incompetence was sniffed out by Arsenal fans when their youngster Myles Lewis-Skelly was given a straight red card for a trip on a Wolves player in his own half. Whilst it's funny to laugh at Arsenal fans pretty much daily, what is actually going on with referees in the Premier League and in this country? Should we do something about that? Nah, I'm actually good, you know. But you know what? I've really been liking penis recent. What? David Coote came out this week and, well, he came out. He was interviewed following on from the drama that he caused earlier on this season, in which he explained his sexuality. Now, I've seen a lot of reaction to this, and I'm here to say that I'm happy for him in regards to the fact that I'm glad that he feels like he can express himself and be himself finally, instead of maybe covering it up to certain family members or general public. I don't know. I don't agree with the conspiracies of Arsenal fans that suggest this could be a hoax to cover up their 18-year-old left-back being suspended for 3 games. What I do have a problem with, though, apologising to the citizens of Liverpool by sitting down and having an exclusive interview with The Sun. You fucking imbecile. A newspaper famed for blaming the victims of the Hillsborough tragedy for overpopulation and recklessness, whilst also covering up the failings of the police department and the government in the area. And it adds to the long list of terrible PR disasters when it comes to referees in the Prem. Now, it feels like the real ammunition of talk about referees in the Prem really started with David Coote. Because don't get it twisted, there were some horrible decisions last season in the Prem. But a ref coming out, not like that, and saying he hated Jurgen Klopp kinda took the biscuit a little bit.
German cunt, fuck me.
Tensions were already flaring up for a debatable red card against Declan Rice versus Brighton, given the lack of consistency when it comes to carding players for kicking the ball away since that incident. On top of that, you had Southampton's disallowed goal versus Brighton for an offside, one of the worst decisions I've seen in a long time. Bruno Fernandes's soft red card versus Tottenham, Lisandro Martinez attempting to commit grievous bodily harm weekly, and Pervis Estupiñán's horror challenge going unpunished versus West Ham. But Michael Oliver's decision last weekend seemed to tip people over the edge, as Lewis-Skelly was red carded innocuously, seemingly, for basically stopping a counter-attack and tripping over a Wolves attacker. And I can't lie, he wasn't very pleased with the 4th official when they reminded him to take his shampoo through on the way to his early shower. If we're being honest, their opponents, Wolves, they are no strangers to decisions like this and would have had basically no sympathy for Gunners fans, having racked up about 47 PGMOL apologies. Meanwhile, one Arsenal fan reckoned that Michael Oliver needed to be investigated by the Met Police. I reckon they should probably investigate a man in his 30s living in the general North London area before they investigate Michael Oliver. Now, whilst I accepted that this was an absolutely crazy decision, the more depressing thing out of all of this was knowing that Arsenal fans were just going to carry on talking about how disgracefully treated they've been over the last 3 years, as if we haven't been absolutely shafted in previous times too. Already mentally drained, knowing I'm gonna be hearing conspiracy theories and then bringing up a free kick that David Luiz was unfairly booked for back in 2019. As if the PGMOL are currently knee sliding through their living room, and the fact that Arsenal still managed to beat Wolves thanks to Ricardo Calafiori. Next up, we're gonna have referees blocking Kai Havertz as he's about to run through on goal. Who am I kidding? They don't need to do that. He'll miss it anyway. Now, one thing that has developed over the last week is a number of abusive messages that have been sent to Michael Oliver. And whilst I've joked about how incompetent referees have been so far this season, and don't get it twisted, they definitely have, their threats are not cool in this situation. I mean, well, they never are, obviously. That was a... See, certified Niran statement. No, you shouldn't be sending death threats to referees' families. I don't know, maybe I'm being hypocritical. After all, just last week, I tweeted that if both managers agree, a referee should be rushed mid-game. I'm just here to tell you that I was joking. Unless it's Anthony Taylor. But doing that is never gonna actually get the point across. It's never gonna actually help anybody. And it is just simply terrible for, you know, referees' families to be able to deal with. At the end of the day, they might have not made a decision that you're happy with or that you agree with, but they are still humans, and their families as well should not be getting brought into any of this. So now that's been said, now that's been sort of compartmentalized and that's out of the way, what we can agree on is referees being incompetent and the fact that death threats shouldn't be existing towards them can be mutually exclusive events. Because at the end of the day, right, no matter what has happened outside of that, from just a purely professional perspective, Michael Oliver having a fail compilation midway through a season is absolutely heinous behavior. The last thing a referee should have of any kind is a compilation. They're supposed to be there to silently monitor and manage a game, and they're not going to get every decision correct. That's absolutely fine. We're not actually asking them to do that. And that's where, to be honest with you, on-field referees have been let down at times, because VAR and their peers should be stepping in with all the angles that they've got and the fact that they can freeze time, rewind, rewind, go back and take a look in slow motion if they need to, that's where they should be stepping in and bailing out their friends by giving the right decision if the on-field decision was wrong. But the fact of the matter is that doesn't seem like it's actually happening. I mean, I'm going to go back to one that it's not a very high profile one because it was Brighton versus West Ham. And with the best will in the world, Brighton, you know, are on a decent run of form at the moment. And don't get it twisted, I like Brighton and I like West Ham generally speaking. I like West Ham's fan base. I like Brighton's team. Either way, what I'm trying to say is Pervis Estupiñán won against West Ham. That didn't get the craziest amount of coverage because of the two teams that were involved. That is one of the worst decisions I have ever seen in regards to not being overturned by VAR after actually looking at it. You know, we take a look at stuff like the Luis Diaz one. The Luis Diaz offside, which I always go back to against Tottenham, at the end of the day was a miscommunication because there were too many chefs in the kitchen. They actually came to the right decision. They just thought that the on-field decision had been the opposite way round and a miscommunication led to the wrong thing happening. That can kind of be excused almost because at least they said the right things. They just did it the wrong way round. An actual human being who's ever watched a football match looking at this Pervis Estupiñán tackle and not thinking it's a red card is absolutely mental. The Lisandro Martinez tackles. What are we doing here? He keeps jumping into challenges two-footed and he's not getting anything. He's gonna break someone's leg in the next year. It's gonna happen. So if you just keep allowing him to do that, you're not even giving him a yellow card, you're not even giving a foul half the time, he's gonna do some serious damage. Do you know what I saw this week that was absolutely crazy? And it genuinely, I think it actually affirmed to me how useless the whole system actually is. If you go to the Premier League's website, okay, they have a section on high challenges, like high-footed challenges and what the result should be. And they conclude that the result should be a red card. Do you want to know what picture they're using as like the actual main picture for this segment on the website? It's Jeremy Doku karate kicking Alexis McAllister in the penalty area, which didn't even result in a foul.
Ollie, confirm on field decision of play on. Check is complete. Check is complete.
They're taking the piss. Nobody knows what the rules are, and this is actually the problem. You've got the Premier League who've taken a screenshot of a situation and gone, that's a high tackle, that should be a red card. But in the moment, the referee and the VAR don't even think so. So who's even in the right? You know what? Fuck it. Let's go back to this Myles Lewis-Skelly incident and let's really analyze it. Because that's why we're actually here. That's what sparked this debate. On the face of it, I actually do hear the outrage to some extent. I mean, Micah Richards was quoted as saying it's the worst VAR decision in history, but that is definitely over the top. At the end of the day, Lewis-Skelly has basically gone in to actually trip a guy over, a Wolves attacker, because he's threatened and he's scared of Wolves counter-attacking. Now, in the usual situation, that's obviously a yellow card. It's just a cynical tackle. You see cynical challenges every week and they get given as a yellow card because you've pulled someone down and you know they're getting away from you and it might be a 4-on-4 situation at the back. But if we go in a little bit closer, he does connect high with his boot above the ankle. So you could technically argue that it's dangerous. But I think what's frustrating is again, this is why I understand what Arsenal fans are saying, because if this was being given as a red card every week, I would probably say the game's gone, but I would also say at least they're being consistent. They're not. They're not being consistent. The Estupiñán tackle I talked about earlier was 5 times more dangerous than this one was. You got Marc Cucurella's hair getting pulled, like, cynically, and again not being given as a red card, even though it was actually agreed upon, and like I think there was an official PGMOL apology when Christian Romero did the exact same thing to Marc Cucurella like a year and a half ago. So if a PGMOL apology is happening then, and the same thing happens, what are we doing here? There's no consistency at all. And this is actually a massive problem. This isn't just a Prem, this is English referees as a whole. Now, even generally speaking, the fact that Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor, again, nothing against them as human beings, as people, they might be cool, I've never met them before, but those two being the shining light of referees in this country genuinely says a lot. On my life, I don't think they would be like top 4 in Germany or in Spain. Maybe in Italy. Some of the officiating in Italy is fucking awful as well. But they have made some really, really, really high profile errors, even in the last 2 years in the Premier League. There doesn't feel like there's a Mike Dean anymore, or a Howard Webb, or a Uriah Rennie, even going back ages, who commands a lot of respect and you would actually trust to referee like a Champions League final. Imagine Anthony Taylor in charge of a Champions League or World Cup final. Disaster. But as I said, it's all areas. EFL referees are fucking horrible. The amount of things and clips that I get sent for FTW from EFL referees having an absolute stinker is crazy. The most recent one that I saw was like Sunderland scoring. They scored, and in the build-up, a defender had tripped over an attacker. Just a complete clash of legs. They just had a coming together. Nobody really argued about it. They just bumped into each other. Neither one had been looking at each other. That happened in the build-up, and then the ball ended up in the back of the net. The referee didn't blow for it. it, the linesman didn't flag for it, and then 15 seconds later, they just decided to change their mind and gave it as a foul, even though it was one of the softest fouls I've ever seen. And just today, as I'm recording this, I witnessed a referee give a red card to a Watford women's player for complaining about the fact that the corner flag was waterlogged. He walked over to her, had a conversation, walked away, then turned around and sent her off, and then basically just red carded someone else because he felt like it later on in the game. It's awful, and the problem for me, as far as referees are concerned, is that there's no professional repercussions. I'm not talking about emotional ones. There are a lot of emotional repercussions. As I mentioned earlier, they're getting death threats, and that shouldn't be happening. They shouldn't be just thrown under the bus and into the limelight to the point where they can receive those from members of the public. I honestly think the FA do a terrible, awful job at shielding referees because they shield them in the wrong way. They don't allow them to talk and come out and explain themselves, and I think that lack of communication has fans even more frustrated. I honestly think you wouldn't get the same type of abuse or the same type of interactions between fans and referees if they genuinely, in the moment, came out after a game and said, here's my reasoning for giving this. If Michael Oliver had been allowed to give an interview, not even straight after the game, but just make a statement or something and say, yo, I thought that his boot made a connection a little bit higher, as you can see from this picture. That's the reason I gave it as a sending off. We'd at least respect him a little bit more, but there's none of that. They're all just allowed to huddle together, sweep things under the carpet, and act like a little mafia away from the judgment of the public. Every issue's never talked about, and then you see the same referees managing a game the next week. I honestly think if a referee, I know in some situations if a PGMOL apology has to be given out to a club, the referee involved in that or the VAR official involved in that gets like demoted or gets taken off a game for a week, and we saw that with Anthony Taylor, mate. I think it was last season. He got demoted to the championship and then ironically made a terrible decision in the championship as well. I'm gonna be so real. It doesn't happen enough. Again, I think the first port of call is communication, and I'm glad that we've seen a little bit of that sprinkled in with the Carabao Cup. We had a referee actually for the first time in the UK explaining a VAR decision over the tannoy system to the spectators, to the crowd, to the fans, so that they actually knew what was going on. They didn't even know what was occurring or what was happening when a VAR decision was being made if you were in the stadium. But at the same time, if I'm a referee, and I'm not questioning their integrity at all, to be honest with you, that's not what I'm doing, but do you really have that much on the line if you make an incorrect decision? Not really. You don't support any of the teams that are involved. Nothing happens to you if you make a mistake. The emotional backlash is bad and shouldn't be happening, but like a lot of the time that doesn't happen. This has been a very high profile case as far as Michael Oliver is concerned. Like, I genuinely think fans and referees' relationships would be improved a whole lot more with a bit more communication, like all relationships at the end of the day, and with some kind of maybe even point scoring system where if a referee has been involved in too many contentious decisions that have actually been independently checked and independently governed, then there is actually repercussions professionally. I don't have to see Anthony Taylor in charge of a Chelsea game for a year. I don't have to see Michael Oliver in charge of a Premier League game for 3 weeks. If that was a possibility, I think you'd get better results. I've been quoted recently myself as saying that I don't like VAR at the moment, and that's true. I'm not a massive fan of what it's been over the last year, but again, it's mostly because of the people that are actually in charge of it. VAR is, I always say this, it's such a useful tool. I feel like a broken record. You've literally got the power to rewind time and make a good decision in a football match. But so often we cross over to VAR for a seemingly obvious red card or a seemingly obvious offside or a seemingly obvious something, and nothing's given. And ultimately it's the people that actually use it that are letting it down. But what are your thoughts on Premier League referees? And I mean seriously. I don't just mean, yo, these lot of shit. What can we actually do to help referees in these situations and to actually improve the system? Because right now, I'm looking at it, I'm not really liking what I'm seeing. I don't feel like we've progressed in the last 3 years at all. That though is going to wrap up this video, and I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, then feel free to slap a like on the video, and of course subscribe if you are new to the channel. Shout out to members, you can become one of those by clicking the join button down below. Massively appreciate you guys because it's the best way to support the channel. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye. A broken chair squeaked at the end, fam. Fucking hell.